and open up that camera. Then point it right here at the QR code. Do you have it? I'll wait a second. When you see the link pop up on your screen, give it a tap. You ready? Boom! Welcome to the Hillsborough County official YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of videos here, all about what makes our community such an awesome place. From local events and community highlights to what's in the perfect Cuban sandwich. We've got it all. We're always adding new things, so while you're here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video. Here's that QR code again, just in case you missed it. Go ahead and check it out. Ooh. This must have fallen out of that video. This really is the perfect Cuban sandwich.
Welcome to a meeting of your Planning Commission, the official local planning agency for the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Planning Commission provides innovative leadership and long-range vision that contributes to the creation of a thriving, prosperous community that offers opportunity, fairness, and choice in how we live, move, learn, work, and play. For more information about the Planning Commission, please call 813-272-5940. Follow us on social media or visit our website at planhillsborough.org.
Welcome everyone to the October 9th, 2023 regular meeting of the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. For those attending in person and wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign the register at the rear of the room and turn off any devices that may be a distraction. To minimize feedback in the audio, all online participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should unmute themselves to indicate that they would like to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. When your name is called, you will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org. Excuse me. For action items, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chair. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I would ask everybody to stand while I lead us all in the invocation and pledge of allegiance. At this time, I would ask that everybody bow their heads and silently reflect in prayer for a couple moments for all the people who lost their lives this weekend and for the ongoing struggles going on across the world. Thank you. All right. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. So with that, I would like to go ahead and ask the clerk to call roll, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bernstein,
Here.
Bowden,
Here.
Buzza,
Here.
Cardenas,
Here.
Fernandez,
Here.
Handy, Kress,
Here.
Lauk, Surya, Orton,
Here.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Joseph.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the August 14th, 2023 meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion. Oh, sorry. I'll motion to approve the minutes.
All right.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion of approval by Commissioner Fernandez and a second to that motion by Commissioner Buzza. Any comments or discussion from the commissioners? Not seeing any, I will ask the clerk to do a roll call vote on that item.
Bernstein,
Here.
Bowden,
Yes.
Buzza,
Here. Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Fernandez,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you very much. Next up on our agenda, item 1E, the collection of statement of interest forms for anyone who has not filled those out and emailed them directly to Sharon. If you have any, we can pass them to Sharon. You want to come and collect them for us? For anybody? I have one here. You have a question or just laughing at me? All right. We good? All righty. With that, we will, I think she's going to, her and Tracy or Tracy will tabulate the interest and let us know about it tomorrow or the day after. I think
We'll send it out via email.
Okay.
Yeah. And that way, if anybody who wasn't here wants to add, they still can.
All righty. On to our next agenda item of business. Item number 2, public input. We didn't have anyone sign up for comments. So we'll move on to our next agenda item. Item number 3, our first and only action item. 3A, LDC 230913, Land Development Code Text Amendment, Farm Worker Housing Review and Development Standards, and the presenter is Jillian Massey.
Good afternoon, Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present on Land Development Code Text Amendment 23-0913 regarding farm worker housing review and development standards. And this past Friday, you should have received by email an updated staff report as well as the proposed text. The updated staff report had some additional applicable policy language. The background on this request is that it's a publicly initiated amendment by the Development Services Department in cooperation with the Hillsborough County Agriculture Economic Development Council, or the AEDC. And this was directed by the Board of County Commissioners. The reason for this request is to make amendments to the Land Development Code that will promote the efficient development of farm worker housing and predictability in the development process. You'll have a red line in your package to discuss modifications and permit review, screening and landscaping, sidewalks, parking, stormwater management, project occupancy, lighting, and county road standards. Planning Commission staff has done a review on this proposed text amendment and has found it to be consistent with several goals, objectives, and policies in the comprehensive plan, including policy 9.2 under objective 9, relationship to land development regulations, which discuss that developments must meet or exceed the requirements of all land development regulations as established and adopted by Hillsborough County. It's also consistent with policies under the objective relating to general considerations for agriculture, which says to protect the economic viability of agriculture activities by recognizing and providing for its unique characteristics in land use planning and land development regulations. The proposal is also consistent with policies under the agriculture retention objective, which says recognizing that the continued existence of agricultural activities is beneficial, the county will develop in coordination with the appropriate entities economic incentives to encourage and expand agricultural activities. And based on those considerations, Planning Commission staff has found the proposed text amendment consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Israel Monsanto from the County Department of Development Services here, and he will give a short presentation as well.
Good afternoon. Israel Monsanto Development Services. I think Ms. Massey did a good introduction of the changes. Commissioners, compared to the workshop that we had last month, we do have just 3 main changes to the compared to the information that I shared last month in the workshop. And those 3 standards that changed are the red text that you have that you received last Friday. And those changes basically are the result of public outreach that we had with the general public, and we received also comments from other staff. Specifically, one of the first changes, of course, is the pertaining to the density and unit count when dormitories are utilized in a farm worker housing project. So for purposes of density calculation, this will be calculated at 7 residents equaling to 1 unit. Today, the average number of workers in a single mobile home unit is 7. Therefore, staff proposes that the same count is used to equal 1 unit when a dorm is used. So basically, this is not changing the overall density of the site, and the maximum density is still capped at 20 units per the acre. So that's not changing, it's just the number of residents or workers that you can utilize in a structure, in this case, a dormitory. The other change pertains to project setbacks. A 50-foot setback is required for housing, parking areas, athletic fields, and also for storage structures. Staff proposes that if no other reasonable means of access exist to the farm worker housing unit site, or also to avoid impacts to environmentally sensitive areas, internal driveways would all be allowed to be placed within this 50-foot setback within site boundaries. So just for those 2 specific circumstances that are reasonable, then a farm worker site will be allowed to encroach only for internal driveways within those 50 feet of setbacks. Lastly, the other change is for internal sidewalks and driveways. Since these would be constructed of similar surface materials, staff proposes that a clear physical or visual delineation or barrier shall be provided, and this is for pedestrian safety. So since driveways and sidewalks could be developed with a similar material to avoid vehicles or people walking across each other, we're going to propose that the developer shall provide any different measurements of either visual with plantings or other change of materials so you can visually see, or with a physical barrier to see that where pedestrians are walking and where vehicles are driving in or out of the site. All other standards remain the same as previously presented, and that would be for the screening and landscaping, the sidewalks. Parking requirements will also now be calculated for dorms at one space for 7 farm worker housings. Stormwater management will be calculated based on the whole farm. Lighting is not required, will not be required, and this is consistent with other code regulations. County roads, project occupancy, and permit review process, that hasn't changed compared to the other changes that you saw last month. And again, this is a change that was directed by the Board of County Commissioners, and if you have any specific questions, I am available for answers those.
All right, thank you. We did not have anyone sign up in the public comment for this one, so I will turn it over to the commissioners for discussions, questions. Yes, Commissioner Bernstein.
Maybe just for clarification, because I was looking through the redlining and couldn't quite tell, if you can help me out with the maximum residency per dormitory. Am I correct in hearing you say that the average today is 7 residents per dormitory? Is that what?
7 residents in a single mobile home units. So typically in these projects, you will find mobile home units. And those units would hold an average of 7 workers. Sometimes the developer may want to utilize a dormitory, which is a larger building. So this is not a mobile home unit anymore. What staff did and worked with the agricultural staff was that we're gonna use the average number of workers in a single mobile home and then basically transfer that to a dormitory. So for every 7 workers in a dormitory, that will count as a unit.
And how many units, this is where I'm unclear, is there a cap on the number of units per dormitory?
So the maximum density is 8 dwelling units per acre. So depending on the size of the farm worker housing, and depending on the acreage and the future land use, you are capped at 8 dwelling units per the acre. So basically, you transfer that same equivalency to a dorm. So whenever you have seven workers, regardless of how many dorms you have, it's 7 workers will equal 1 unit, and that's what you use to calculate the number of the density at the end of the day.
So forgive me because I'm math challenged, but by that calculation, then basically the cap would be 56 workers per acre if a dormitory is used. Am I calculating that correct? 7 times 8?
Well, it depends on the acreage that you have and also the future land use, the density that's permitted, right? So, but again, if it is 8, you are correct. If it is at 8 dwelling units per the acre, you can have the 56 residents. That's what you said, right?
Per acre.
Per acre.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Cardenas.
And this is probably not, in what we decide on, but how are they verifying that? How are they verifying how many residents they're actually putting in there? Is there a minimum bedrooms for?
Well, that will have to go through state regulation. So there is the occupancy and the number of residents still be regulated by the, let me just looking for it here. Yeah, so that's regulated by the Health Department Migrant Labor Camp, residential migrant housing permit. So they will verify the number of residents that will be held on each unit.
Commissioner Kress.
First off, I like your bicycle pin.
Thank you.
So I'm guessing this is a lower car ownership area. So you might get a lot of pedestrians, people walking. And then it struck me that you said there's no lighting requirements. I just wondered, does that concern you from a safety perspective? I'm guessing some of these shifts probably start, pretty early in the morning while it's still dark.
So right now the code doesn't require parking lighting. So this basically clarifies that you're not required to provide parking lighting, but it's always an option. You can provide it, but it's not a requirement. And again, this is consistent with other code requirements. And these workers are transported all the time in shuttles or buses. So they would come in, they will take them to the farms, and then they will bring them back in. So it's not, typically you wouldn't see them walking, you won't see them walking to farms. Now, I believe there may be staff virtually participating in this. I'm not sure if Mr. Grant is participating virtually, if he can answer some of those specific questions. But yes, like I said, these are transported in and outside in shuttles, in buses to the farms, from the farm worker house.
So the lighting was referred to lighting a parking area, not necessarily street lighting or anything like that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a curious question here. I don't see anything about those buses and shuttles. I've visited some of the migrant farms, and I've seen 12, 15 buses, on the property at one time. Is there anything that addresses that at all, where they're parking, where they're loading, things like that?
Not necessarily, because these parking spaces, we do have some parking space exchanges, but it's just a number of each parking per unit, not necessarily for the buses or shuttles, no.
Thank you.
All right, were there any more questions or discussions items from the commissioners? Not seeing any lights at this time, then I will go on ahead and close public comment on this item and open it up to motions on this item from the commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I move that we find that the attached resolution finding proposed land development code text amendment language modifying farm worker housing review and development standards, I move that we find that resolution consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan and forward that recommendation along to the Hillsborough County Board of Commissioners.
Commissioner Buzzer. All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Bernstein and a second to that motion made by Commissioner Buzzer. Any comments, discussion items from the commissioners? Not seeing any, I will ask the clerk to go ahead and do a roll call vote on that item.
Bernstein,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Buzza,
Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Fernandez,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
All right, thank you for the information. And we will move on to our next agenda item. Item number 4, we're out of action items, so we're on to briefings and presentations. And the first one is a Planning Commission user fee study, and the presenters are Sean College and Alan Parks.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Sean College. I'm the Planning Commission's Division Director for Strategic Planning, Environmental, and Research. Some of you who have been here for a while may recall a few years ago we engaged a consultant to review the user fees that are charged to Hillsborough County for work we do with Hillsborough County. So recently we engaged MGT Consulting to do a review of the fees that the Planning Commission charges for the services we provide to the 3 cities. So this is a presentation on that effort, and we have Bruce Cowens from MGT Consulting Online who may be available. With us in-house is Alan Parks from MGT Consulting, and he will be telling us about the study he performed.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alan Parks. I am a consultant with MGT. We're headquartered just down the road from you guys, and we've done work with you before, so really appreciate you having us back to do another study with you all. Like Sean said, this is focused mainly on the 3 cities. I have a short presentation to go over with you all. If you have any questions as we go, there's a slide at the end, but feel free to ask as I go. Don't mind stopping me, it's okay. First, just go over the project. The first step in this is always to figure out the fees that we want to study. In this scenario, we looked at 6 different fees for the Plan Commission. From there, we also started collecting all the financial and activity data. So when I'm talking about that, what we're talking about is budget expenditures, the transaction data, timesheet data, and everything like that. After we put together our initial model, what we do is we'll sit down with our client. Sean can attest to all the time that we spent together going through all these models. We refine the model, we make sure that the time is accurate and relevant to each individual fee, and making sure that the employee effort is reflected properly within the model. While all that is going on, I'm also working on the peer comparisons with the peer jurisdictions that were selected, and also the 2 fees that we looked at as well. So leading into our study results, here you'll see the fees and the current prices that are being charged for those fees. The cost of service column here is what was found from our study. So the cost of service in this scenario is the total cost or the total resources expended by the Planning Commission for each individual fee. So just as an example, if you look at the first fee on that list, it is costing Hillsborough County about $8,000 to perform that one comprehensive plan amendment for the Plant City, Tampa area for something that's over 500 acres. That next column there, price minus cost, another way to look at it is the total subsidy. So when you're looking at user fees, there's 2 ways to look at it, or 2 ways to collect fees here. The cost of service is going to be covered by the general public, by the general fund, or essentially taxpayer dollars, or by charging the customer directly. So in the current scenario, if you're looking at the total cost of service, comparing that to your current prices, you can see that the Planning Commission would be subsidizing the customer about $5,000 of service or of costs. With all that, going into our recommendations is to do a full cost recovery for all your services. So looking at the total cost of service, we do kind of round it down to the nearest hundredth for all these prices, just to make it a little bit easier to collect, honestly, and easier to put into your code and ordinance and everything like that. Sorry. But you will see that we are suggesting a full cost recovery for all these. And also I want to point out that we did look at a fee that isn't currently being charged, but it's a service that is being provided by the county or by the commission currently. And it's at the very bottom there. It's that continuance of a plan amendment there. So it's a new fee that you all can start charging or potentially look to charging to the public for that service. Now, what I will say with all these recommended prices is these are our recommendations, but however, it is a policy decision at the end of the day. So it is up to you all to make the final decision, but these are what we would typically suggest for a study like this, is full cost recovery. As we were going through the study, we noticed that currently and in the past, there hasn't been very many large comprehensive plan studies being performed. So we had talked about maybe simplifying the fee schedule. If I flip back to the previous slide, you'll see in the first 4 fees there, there's different categories. It's split, 500 more or less, and then 50 more or less for Temple Terrace there. What we've proposed is to go ahead and simplify that. There haven't been very many, if any, large comprehensive plans in the past, and as we've discussed, there's really not too many that are looking to be happening in the future. And if they are, it's going to be few and far between. So to simplify the fee schedule, we went ahead and recommended just go ahead and removing those different categories and just charging what would be the lower or the less than prices for those comprehensive studies. Throughout this process, we also reached out to the individual cities, and this was used more as information for those cities, just so they have an idea of how much it costs them to provide these services on their end. So one thing I'll point out here is on the left, Plant City and Temple Terrace, that is looking specifically at their planning department. So you'll see that the cost of service for them is substantially lower than Tampa. Tampa, when they provided the information to us, they provided it for the city-wide. So not only was it their planning division, but it was also including their engineering, their water, legal time, and some other time in there as well. So that all that extra information is why you're seeing that their costs are so high, and also the total effort, the hours are much higher than Plant City as well. From there, we go on to the peer comparison. These are the peers that were selected. They are all within the region, all somewhat similar to the city and area that is nearby here in Florida. What we can say is that these peers aren't quite apples to apples to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission provides the services for these 3 cities and for the unincorporated area in Hillsborough County, while these are cities that are performing the same similar services, and then Hillsborough County as well. And then the fees that we looked at comparing were the comprehensive plan, the small scales, and then rezoning fees as well. What you'll see is with the comparative data, as again I said, it's not quite apples to apples, but you can still draw somewhat of a conclusion or idea of what's going on here. It's a little small, I do apologize, but those first 2 on the left there, that represent what you are currently charging. The next 2 to the right of that is what we are recommending on the small scale. So 7,500 about and 7,000, and then the rest are all your peers. You'll see that Hillsborough County is pretty substantially high, and they recently just had a study performed not too long ago. So that is a pretty good example of that substantial increase in costs. You're seeing it with your peers when they're doing current studies. They're increasing the costs a good bit. The other city jurisdictions, they are, if you average everything out, they are pretty close to what your recommended fee is, but that you can see that they are lower. One thing to consider, though, they may not have performed a user fee study like this in quite some time. We know that some jurisdictions haven't looked at their fees in 10, 20 years. So these fees may be representing old data. If they were to do a study tomorrow, I'm sure majority of them would see somewhat of an increase. And then the last thing here, this is the rezoning comparative data that we were able to pull. It's really hard to pull some sort of final conclusion with this data. What I can say, though, is if you look at what Hillsborough County's current fee is, and I know that is being charged on top of what's being charged at the cities as well. So Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plant City is an additional $500 currently. But you can see that amount right now is substantially lower than all your peers there being shown. And if you move up to the recommended fee, you're getting pretty close into that range. But as you can see, each city is charging their fees based on different criteria. They maybe perform something slightly different than what's being performed here. So it just depends on what works best for you all in this scenario. With that, open to any questions.
All right, I will open it up to the commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein?
Thanks for the presentation, and I totally get the fact that this is limited in a million different ways, but particularly because of the data that we're relying on, some of which is probably old. But I'm looking at Table 1. I just want to make sure I should be viewing this the right way. If we were in the private marketplace and we were offering, and I know we're not, and we were offering our services to various purchasers, is it fair to say that the users on Table 1, I'm looking at Table 1 of the materials, I think you had a condensed version on one of the slides, are getting a pretty good deal on some of these services, on every service listed. On one end of the spectrum, the comp plan amendments for Temple Terrace we are charging $750 for a service that costs us $7,000 and change. I mean, is that, am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, sir, you are. Yes, sir.
Okay, hence, I assume part of the need for the study. And I commend you for doing it, or whoever tasked us with it, because it is important to make sure that we're capturing the value that we're delivering to, you know, not just the direct users, but the people who are beholden to those direct users, which is essentially the citizens of these municipalities. So, thank you.
Sir.
All right, Commissioner Fernandez.
I'm just curious, have you looked at maybe structuring fees based off how many units are built? So I'm trying to think, you know, last month we had someone come in with a tiny lot trying to put on a small house on it, and that one person's gonna have to pay $7,000, and so is the multi-million-dollar developer in Ybor who's gonna put up a 20-story skyscraper, is also only has to spend $7,000?
Right. So when you're looking at setting fees, it really comes down to what's going to be best for you and for the people that you work for, so for the citizens. Now, I hear what you're saying. When we're looking at these fees, we're thinking that if someone's going to be coming in and looking to do a comp plan amendment, it's likely going to be someone that, as you said, is a multi-million-dollar person or business. $7,000 really isn't going to be much at the end of the day. What I can say is there's always the potential. It's a policy decision at the end of the day, but there's always the potential to write in if someone's coming in to do something small like that, just to change. You could always write in that a service like that, you can go based off the cost or the time it takes for your employees, and that way you're still recouping the cost of your services, but you're also not charging them the full $7,000, or because likely something small is not going to take 90 hours of workforce to do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because of my concern, you know, we have a housing crisis at the moment, and we want to infill and redevelop a lot of small lots, and this is going to really, I think, slow that down. You know, and I'm for skyscrapers. I've said that before. That's great, but you know, think of the percentage they're paying compared to the percentage of a 8,000 foot square lot. That's going to really hinder their redevelopment.
If I could add to the answer, we did contemplate a different acreage threshold, different approaches in that regard, and the hard part is that sometimes, particularly in the cities, the small properties have a lot of complexity to them. They have a lot of neighborhood concerns that we spend quite a bit of time on. So we didn't find that the smaller the property, the less time spent. There was no correlation there. What we have discussed, and Sean and I just posed this question to Attorney Robin, whether we could write in perhaps some ability to waive or reduce fees if it was for an affordable housing project or for something like that. So that is something that he indicated could be done as we move forward with this. If there were certain circumstances where you thought the fees should be lowered, we could consider that.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Yeah, Commissioner Cardenas.
Yeah, was there any consideration to just something as simple as, you know, if it's somebody's homestead versus, you know, a developer or something like that?
I'm trying not to say this and not sound jaded after all these years, because I guess my concern would be that we would not be able to very well verify that it was actually the homeowner who wanted to change the land. Like, a lot of times the actual applicant is a landowner. It's just you see their representative here. So how would we be able to verify that? One, we could probably verify that they own the home, but that they want to keep owning the home. So I just would be cautious about it. Be easier on staff to implement if there were some definitive and concrete measures that we could base it on, or that we brought the situation to you all and had you all opine on, yeah, we should waive the fees. When we updated the fees with the county, that was ultimately the approach that they went, because their fees are quite high. But they said, you know, if there's an individual property owner, a community organization that has a hardship, they can come through a board member, and the board member can initiate the, you know, tell us to do the plan amendment, as opposed to that homeowner or community organization initiating it. So that certainly is one option, but I think having something that is a bit more concrete and verifiable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to maybe have that blanket route, but then having that hardship spelled out so that individual owners or whoever it maybe understands that process and understands, hey, this is the avenue for you, because, I mean, like we said, you know, paying $7,000 for a larger unit project is nothing, but for a single individual owner.
Good points. All right, Commissioner Kress.
Yeah, good points that were brought up. I'm fully supportive of covering our costs. And I saw Melissa Dickens walk back in. I didn't know if kind of this influenced at all the update of the comprehensive plan that you're working on with the city of Tampa right now. And you don't necessarily have to answer it from the seats, but just something, if there's coordination with that, maybe we can actually reduce the number of comprehensive plan amendments we need, you know, if we get it right in the overall comprehensive plan. And then the increase in fees would mean increase in budget, so would that money be earmarked for anything? Could it somehow address affordable housing issues?
Well, I should be clear, the money that we receive in fees does not come directly into the Planning Commission budget. It goes into the countywide general fund, which is where our budget comes from. So it is sort of connected, but it's not a direct correlation to us getting increased dollars to support staff or anything like that. Now, as part of the county budget process, I have been asked for ways that we could either increase revenue or decrease cost. And so I felt it was important for us to do this study, to have the information on how we could increase revenue. Ultimately, the fees are set by each jurisdiction. So we will bring this back for a recommendation, and then it will go to the City of Tampa to set the City of Tampa fees, City of Temple Terrace to set their fees, City of Plant City. And so, yeah, each jurisdiction sets the fees that we charge.
Or decides not to.
Right.
Commissioner Orton.
I just wanted to agree with Melissa. It doesn't matter if it's a large scale or a small scale. Staff is still going to put in those hours researching, writing the staff report, presenting the staff report to various committees and Planning Commission, the City Council, or the Board of County Commissioners. So that doesn't have a big effect on the time that they spend. I've been in many cities and counties, and it's you spend more time on each case than is paid for. But I was in a county, and they had a waiver of fees that they would go before the Board of County Commissioners, and then they were the ones that decided, no, they can't pay the entire amount, or they gave them some relief from it. And then that way it was on them and not on staff on how much they would pay.
Thank you. All good points, Commissioner Orton. Thank you. Commissioner Buzza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm fully on board with recouping our costs. I think this is a great analysis to be able to get the cost accounting on there. I would say to the commission, when we do have a vote on this matter, that we look at maybe doing a stagger on this, so that give the developers and the homeowners an opportunity to kind of absorb this. And we're talking 200% to 600% increases, and also our competitiveness with other counties. So that's my only 2 cents for that matter.
Good points, Commissioner Buzz. I would echo those. As the two commissioners who were here when this happened last time. Those were the main conversations we had back then. You know, everybody was for it, but we kind of wanted to make sure that there was a phasing or a staggering or some sort of, you know, thought or discussion going into that. So that would be the point I would echo and the point I wanted to make myself. When this comes back before us, we didn't hear much about that sort of thing, like how each jurisdiction is going to try and handle it or ideas on how that might be handled. So some thought might go into that, or some discussion with the jurisdictions, you know, how they might want to start thinking about that. If, like I said, they even want to start thinking about that, we'll see. So, yeah, good points, Commissioner Buzz. Yes, Ms.
Yeah,
Medina.
no, I would just say that your recommendation on the county fees was to phase them in. The county commission at that time decided to charge the full cost immediately. So, absolutely, we will incorporate some phasing into our recommendation.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other comments or discussion items from the commissioners at this point in time? No? Then we will thank you for the information and the presentation, and we will move on to our next agenda item of business, and that is 4B, the future land use assessment recommendations, and the presenter is Jennifer Malone and Melissa Dickens.
Jennifer Malone with your Planning Commission staff. Bear with me while I am pulling up the PowerPoint. Okay. So I'm here to introduce our consultant, Alan Steinbeck, on this item. We have been working very closely with Alan with the Pritchett Steinbeck Group for the last over a year now on the update to the future land use section of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. So just as a quick reminder, this is part of the Live, Grow, Thrive 2045 initiative to update our plan to go into the year 2045 on the City of Tampa side. It's a joint process between us and the City of Tampa. They're definitely our partners in this process. And where are we? Right now, we've had One Water come before this board. That is now effective. That was the combination of several sections of the comprehensive plan, so we have whole new language in the plan. Mobility and environmental sections came before this board earlier this year. Those are working its way through the process now, and those will become effective probably at the beginning of next year. So we already have 3 whole sections of the plan update done. In February of 2024, or probably like springtime, we're hoping to bring forward the future land use, the housing, and the coastal management sections. That would be initiated in the spring, so it would come to you a couple months later. And then sometime in 2024, we'll have an update about when our next elements are coming forward. So this is what we've done so far with Alan, our recommendations. This draws on hundreds of comments from citizens, a second phase of public outreach that's continuing as we actually go to Cafe Con Tampa on Friday morning to give another update about this presentation. And this is not an action item. We're only here as an update and to get your thoughts and feedback and let you know where we are. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Alan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Again, Alan Steinbeck. I'm very pleased to be representing the Planning Commission on this project. I am a former staffer, and so it pleases me to do this with you all and this agency. I did want to say and give a special thank you to the staff that we have been working with. Your staff has been excellent in teaming to do this work, as well as the City of Tampa staff, who's dedicated a lot of time and effort. I think it's been a very good staff-to-staff collaboration so far, and we've worked very hard together to get to where we are now. This is an important part of the project in that we are wrapping up an engagement session. We had an early engagement series that we did during phase 1 of the project, where we came to talk to you all and had a large amount of meetings. We just had another round of meetings with some stakeholder agencies, elected officials, and the public. And this is really the last bit of our intentional feedback that we're seeking. So we do want you all, while there's no action item today, to give us some feedback on what's being presented and to ask any questions or provide any comments that you have for us now. And the reason that's important is because what Jen was just talking about, which is moving into writing text and policy and preparing for the amendment that's going to come forward at the beginning of next year. The purpose of our effort here is to provide updates to the future land use section. So my work has been focused on that one section, even though there's been some crossover work for some others. We've heard all along and from very early on in the comprehensive planning process about people wanting to maintain Tampa's culture and character. It's very important to them around here for various reasons, including some of the distinct cultural assets, people, and communities we have in neighborhoods. There's a very strong sense to live out a sense of stewardship. People want to care for this place. The people that we heard from in the comp plan update process have that sensibility, as well as wanting to take care of other people in the community, like providing access to jobs and services for all, including better transportation options and affordable housing. So I think the public consciousness is very high around those two issues these days. And then we also asked people about whether Tampa was moving in the right direction, and our respondents to our survey said that Tampa is moving in the right direction, but some people are not benefiting from the economic forces that are at work here to make Tampa a very positive place and a place moving in a good direction economically. Our recent set of engagement included nearly 200 people that attended various meetings that we had. The website that we have for our overall project for the comprehensive plan update has received over 2,300 views from many users. And we have an interactive poll results through this process that shows general favorability for the proposed recommendations that are in the packet and the things that I'm talking to you about today. We really had a diverse set of stakeholders that we talked to, including the Builders Association, some neighbors. We talked to the Sierra Club and some others as well. So we had a very diverse set of people providing feedback to us, and I was very pleased to see that such a diverse group of stakeholders had broad support for this stuff. They're never always sure about all of that when you go into this. What we discovered along the way, as we heard people talk about usability challenges of the comp plan and the LDC working together, in particular, given the fact that there are a lot of legacy policy tools in the comp plan that have been inserted over the years and have sort of remained in a way that makes it a little problematic to implement or interpret. And then just in general, those policy mismatches between the comp plan and the LDC where those need some attention. We did ask people how important it is to incentivize some topic areas, and this was early on in the project where we asked about affordable housing and new development projects, transit-oriented development, mixed-use development projects, and redeveloping commercial corridors. And you can see the little curve in the background is the respondents. A lot of people said that all of these things are essential, and all of them received a high favorability in terms of what we should be prioritizing in the comprehensive plan. So as we moved into creating bonuses and bonus types, we tried to reflect those priorities and have a set of bonuses that really respond to those sets of priorities that we heard. We are adding a couple of new things to the bonus structure. We're adding an affordable housing bonus and a transit bonus. The city already has a gray water bonus that's a function of state statutes. And we're also adding what's being called an efficient and resilient buildings bonus, which is a green buildings plus resilience features category that we've created. And then there's other incentives. There's mixed use, step up in density incentives in the comp plan today. Those will be maintained similar to where they are now, as well as the central business district periphery bonus that is also part of the existing comprehensive plan. There were several benefits to the bonus structure. There were some choices we had early on in how to take the future land use categories and modernize them and make them more accommodative of some of the market forces that are at play in the city now. And we settled on creating the bonus structure, and it was for a lot of different reasons. One is that it enhances the established growth management strategy for the future land use element in the section. We didn't want to rethink the growth strategy. The growth strategy was sound. The comprehensive plan needed a new tool, and the bonus structure was fitting that bill for us. The bonus greatly increases the role of affordable housing provision in qualifying for bonuses, so taking on a big hot topic was something we could do here. And more future land use categories can be included in the bonusing as well. And through some of the normalization and consistency work that needs to be done still, ending up with fewer comprehensive plan amendments so that there's not as much need for that given the flexibility that's in the new regime. Importantly, this puts nothing in place that cannot be reversed or recalibrated. All of the bonuses that you hear about being proposed are optional and not mandates. So we're not requiring people to do these things. We're not requiring affordable housing to be included, but we are highly incentivizing it. So when it comes to the Burt Harris concerns of Florida statutes, we're not getting in the way of that through the bonuses. They can be taken back without any sort of penalty and also adjusted without having to worry about those kind of concerns as well. Those bonuses give the city the flexibility to define how and where bonuses are applied. So the comp plan in this case enables the bonusing structure and does define how it would function, but really the LDC would be enabling in very specific ways and talking about when and how they would be applied. And then also the last thing is just more flexibility in how projects can work while still including some public benefit elements. The bonuses are not given away. All of them have some sort of utility built into them, like the provision of affordable housing or building near transit or providing green buildings, et cetera. So there's a benefit coming back in terms of public goods for every bonus that's given away to individual development. The affordable housing bonus, we have recommended a minimum of at least 10% set aside. So this is to encourage affordable housing designated units within market rate development. We've recommended at least a 10% set aside, which is the current amount that's in the LDC, up to a 20% possibly threshold, depending on how the results come out from a market study that's being conducted right now by the city of Tampa. We also, I want you to look at the map, to look at the map and shows all of the areas of the city of Tampa that have some sort of future land use designation that includes residential. And it's a very large part of the city. So we're trying to get this affordable housing bonus to apply in as many areas as possible, except to note those areas in the coastal high hazard area. Talking more about the bonus now, it provides flexibility for what types of units can be used. So we're incentivizing lower income units by giving them higher bonuses per unit provided. And there's some information about that in the report that was part of the packet, where it talks about under 50% area median income versus 80% area median income units, for example. It's facilitated by a sliding scale bonus, and you'll get those different bonus provisions for different types of units. And it really needs to be put into place to maximize the use of other incentives to create more projects that include this, things like reduced parking, dimensional criteria relief, and possibly even some funding to go along with it to make sure that we're optimizing the use of this bonus and getting the most units out of new development projects. The transit bonus comes in two types: the transit emphasis corridors, which is what you see on the map on the right, and this map is the corridors identified in the city's recently completed transportation plan. Those would get a maximum bonus of 50%, whereas if you're in a TOD area, you would get a 100% bonus for your density. Those would be areas where you, for example, the streetcar, or any area where you have a fixed guideway and high level of transit service. Associated with these provisions would be establishing minimum densities so that you would have a certain amount of required development that you would do if you're near one of these stations, and that's particularly true of the TOD areas where there's such a massive amount of public investment to make those things happen. We want the private investment to come in turn and optimize that investment. And then also requiring affordable housing. Many cities have struggled with buildings transit and higher order transit, and new development comes and none of it's affordable because it's all luxury apartments and stuff. So we wanted to have that included in this as well. For the residential 10 category, right now, the language in the comp plan allows for limited single-family attached homes, and there's been some interpretations over the years about how this works. What we're doing and proposing in these recommendations is to remove all barriers to other small format housing types and allow the language to allow for single-family attached if it meets the density requirements, and also design standards that we've recommended. We've been very clear in the report that one should not just apply density blindly in a neighborhood or infill environment, that good design should be a part of every project, and that's something that's really starts with the comp plan, but gets played out in the land development code and some of the updates that are planned for that. The planning districts, we've recommended transitioning those to away from being a policy designation tool or a growth management tool to a monitoring tool where we just look at what's happening in those areas. There have been some recent conversations in the community about who's in South Tampa versus Central Tampa and whether that's right or not. And I can understand those concerns, but I think those concerns are really around growth management intent rather than I'm inside a certain boundary or not. So we're just recommending to get rid of that growth management intent to the maximum extent possible. One of the primary rationales for that was these are so big, it's really hard to say growth should go in this big place over here, but not in this big place over here. It's just too big of a district to really have thoughtful, meaningful placemaking policies associated with them. And that was the bottom line for me in making this recommendation. And then we're sort of tracking along with the coastal high hazard area work that's going on. I am not doing that work, but I'm trying to follow as best I can about how that's unfolding. But we have clearly stated in our report to recommend not allowing density bonuses in the coastal high hazard area, except for a couple of exceptions, which include the West Shore area, the West Shore Commercial District and Business District, downtown Tampa, and the CRAs that have any sort of overlap with the coastal hazard area. And then mixed-use development, the current plan alludes to some mixed-use corridors, which really were never used very much in implementing the plan's policies. We are recommending to have mixed-use development be a function of the future land use categories and really focus on that. You can see in the map that many of the areas of the city and the commercial corridors and those places that end up being the neighborhood commercial centers are covered by this future land use category. So they're important in the placemaking element of the comp plan and how that functions. You will still be able to get a bonus or a step up in density with this and also be qualified for a bonus. You'll have to meet some criteria for mixed use development if you want to get the step up in density bonus, similar to the way you have it now. But this category, other categories may also be considered for combining, like the CMU 35 and CC 35, and those are some details we're working out. But we want to normalize this. We want to have good mixed-use rules that apply to get more mixed-use development, to create neighborhood nodes, but also make sure that our corridors are developing in a way that are complete and facilitate different modes of transportation. We have recommended eliminating the urban villages policy designation in the plan to really focus on promoting the goals of urban villages and infill aligned with the CRAs and some of the work that's going on. The CRAs have recently had some policy shifts towards implementing housing and other things that I think have bigger land use implications than some of the former CRA priorities of infrastructure investment and that sort of thing. So I think aligning what the CRAs are doing with the infill strategy of the plan is prudent. One of the questions is, what do you do in places that aren't CRAs? And so we as staff and the team here working on this are just looking at what plans are out there, how old are they, do they need to be sunsetted, is there anything that needs to be updated? And we're working through that debate that goes on about should we do neighborhood planning or not, and how do we handle nuanced policy making at the local level. That conversation has not been completed, but that's one of the things we're working on over the course of the fall. For those CRA areas, we really want to, the reason why they're so important is because you cannot just promote development in a CRA and walk away and say that your work is done. You really have to promote the rehabilitation of housing, incentives for affordable housing, new business development, development of underutilized sites, and the adaptive reuse of existing buildings, taking the holistic approach to neighborhood development and not just focusing on the new stuff being the solution to your neighborhood's challenges. So that's the urban villages recommendations. And we have a list of recommended actions. This sort of summarizes a lot of what I just said, but this is for use, and we'll revisit this at the end as you all start to ask some questions and have some discussion. But we really wanted to break this down into a summary slide that gave everybody a sense of the whole intent here, which is really about housing incentives. It's about placemaking. It's about incentivizing types of development rather than having mandates or being too focused on a highly structured regulatory regime in the comp plan. And it also tries to deal with transportation and land use as well. We did go to City Council and give them a briefing on this and got some feedback from council members. We also had one-on-one meetings with all of those who wanted to do that, and all of them except I think one did do that. They were generally supportive of what we're talking about. There were a lot of comments. A lot of comments that we received through this project and also from them relate to the land development code and the comp plan and how the land development code works. So we've been doing some active listening around the LDC, even though our focus has been on comprehensive plan policy development. There were some members of the public at the meeting that spoke in favor of these recommendations, and we've had a lot of housing advocates involved in our process who are directly advocating for housing in the community and housing policies that promote new development. So they've been vocal and partners in helping us sort through some of this decision making. There was a strong desire for additional place-based criteria, designing for people, having good design as part of what we do in the community was a strong emphasis from council, and also just having complete communities be in mind. They were also interested in coastal hazard area, the residential 10 change, which I think is going to generate a lot of discussion, and clarifying the planning district's question of the project. So that is the end of the presentation. I'll go back to that slide that has the list of recommended actions, and we can maybe use that as a guide for any discussion that you all may have.
All right, thank you. I'll open it up to the commissioners now for questions, comments, or discussion items on this presentation. Commissioner Fernandez, I see moving.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious why those 3 districts will get density bonuses, but everybody else will not. Why was that decided? The CRAs, downtown and West Shore, can get density bonuses in the CHAA?
Because they have, well, downtown proper doesn't have density, so it doesn't get a bonus, so it can't, it's out, just for that reason.
Okay.
There's, in the periphery, there's a bonus that's already allowed for in the periphery that, that if you took that away would raise potential Burt Harris concerns around that one. And West Shore just has an established plan of development that, and it's not fully built out in any way, shape, or form, and it's a place that's experiencing a lot of investment. So they have a intent to develop out as an activity center, and we didn't want to thwart that in any way by limiting the incentives that we're creating.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question. Can you just clarify any recommendation 2 spots allow single family attached anywhere in an R10? What does that sort of mean? Like anywhere, just like I'm trying to figure out what that means, like anywhere.
Jennifer Mullen, Planning Commission staff. So right now, there's an interpretation. It says limited townhomes are allowed in the residential 10 designation. And so when somebody calls us and asks, can I do a townhome on my property, and I see that it's R10, I might look, and we also have a policy about encouraging attached single-family dwellings on the periphery of neighborhoods. So when I get that question, I might look and see where it's located. I might go grab David and see what he thinks. And it's a little bit of a process. So we're looking at either, that was part of Alan's recommendation is streamlining that and allowing it citywide with design in place. But we're open to feedback too on any feedback that the commissioners might have about that recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Ornita.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add on about your question regarding the areas for the density bonuses. One of the things we've been discussing with the city staff has been that the CRAs often have a vision that is calling for additional density and intensity to be part of their redevelopment plan. They also have plans often for infrastructure improvements that can address resiliency issues. And so that has been part of the reason why we've included the CRAs as part of those areas that we're considering.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Kress.
Regarding the CRAs and the urban villages, you know, CRAs sunset, and there's lots of discussion about whether we're even going to have CRAs in the city, so I just wonder kind of what's the path there? Like the Ybor CRA sunsets in 10 years,
Good
I think,
question.
for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the business of predicting things, and that's not something I'm in the business of predicting, would be the going away of the CRAs, but they tend to get renewed. I mean, just from politically speaking, they tend to, even there's often a lot of talk in other communities that I've served of getting rid of them, and the county and the city are fighting, and who knows about, like, it can happen, but I think they tend to get resolved and get renewed because of their obvious utility that they have in the community and targeting resources towards specific places. So I have not been following the politics or the decision or the discussions about that in particular very closely, so I can't predict around here. It is problematic, though, in any case, if you create a boundary, if you have a comp plan policy set to a boundary and that boundary changes, you just have to adjust and make sure that your policies reflect whatever changes are happening.
Jennifer Mullen, Planning Commission staff. I just want to add that we do really appreciate that feedback, and that's something that we're going to have to take a closer look at while we're finalizing these recommendations, because that is a possibility, and we would hope that there would be another tool to guide development. For instance, Hyde Park is an urban village. It's not a CRA, but it's a historic district. And so our thought process was then that's going to be the tool for Hyde Park when those urban villages go away. Ybor has the historic district boundary, so there's a plus there, but we definitely need to be looking at making sure that maybe there's another tool for those areas, just in case. Thank you.
And if I may, that was going to be another question in relation to historic districts. I feel like we're placing more and more value on that now, so I don't know if that's a recommendation in some way, but I'd encourage you to think about that too.
Thank you, Commissioner Kress. Did you want to add anything, Ms. Ernie? No. All right. Yes, Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you. For affordable housing, and I know it's kind of late in the process of this project. It kicked in on July 1st, but what are the implications of the local act on future land use? I mean, residential and non-residential land uses, how is that going to affect our overall land use policy and program?
So that, I think, reiterates some of our thought about utilizing bonuses instead of automatically increasing the land use categories, because if somebody was to utilize Live Local, they get access to the highest density land use category in the jurisdiction, which for the city of Tampa is 100 units per acre. We're hopeful that providing these bonuses, the Live Local also has pretty high threshold, 40% affordable housing. There are, as I understand from some in the development community, some limitations to the surety that they know that the act is going to stay written the way that it's going to be written. So I think we're hopeful that this will be a good alternative. There are some places where, because of the zoning and the land use category, they would be eligible for Live Local, and I think that some of our industrial areas, for example, would be eligible, and I think that means that we need to think about how we're planning for those differently. We've thought of them as having truck traffic and having, not necessarily a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists. If we're going to have affordable housing potentially in those areas, we need to think about the transportation system that serves those differently than we have historically. So I think there are a number of implications for our planning that we need to take a look at with that.
All right.
I would just give one bit of perspective, and that I would not predict more than 1 or 2 projects come from that policy in the city of Tampa, or a year. while it's in place. Just because because that threshold is high, there's so few developer types who would go take advantage of it. Your market rate developer is not going to under the current conditions that exist. If there were different conditions in the housing market, you might see more of them. Or if you had a specific neighborhood, like let's say East Ybor started to turn over into a bunch of new housing development, you might get a handful of people doing something like that over there. But it's a very limited incentive, and so you're going to get very little volume out of it, is my prediction.
All right, were there any more comments or discussion items? I did have a question myself. I wanted to quickly commend you on some terms I had heard earlier that I thought were really interesting. Maintaining culture and character, that's something I haven't heard sitting at the head of this dais for many a year now, so it's good to hear some of that come back in. And living out our sense of stewardship, I thought was also an interesting term that I haven't heard bandied around in recent years that I'm happy to hear come back. So I wanted to commend you on those. I thought an interesting term you kicked out early on was efficient and resilient building, because as a trained architect, that seems like an oxymoron to me, but I won't give you too much agita on that. I did want to ask, how come we're not taking this as an opportunity to incentivize efficient and resilient building in areas like the coastal high hazard area?
It's a good question. We have good ideas for how to address the energy efficiency of buildings. That's been going on for many decades now in a formalized way. Addressing resilience in buildings has not been going on in a formalized way for many decades. So we're still figuring that out, and the public policy discussion is still going on. And until such time as we really know exactly what we want to be incentivizing, and to what degree and what effect it has on development economics as well, because you have to be measured when you do these things. I think we're maybe not ready yet to unleash that bonus in that area because it's not quite there. I do think it's right for the comp plan to enable it to happen and to create the bonus and do. I was very much a proponent of that from the beginning, but that would be my answer about that. Is I can't stand here and tell you exactly everything we should be doing and to what degree and effect. So maybe that's something that can be revisited. The housing side of it, and I'll say about that bonus in particular, a lot of people were very adamant about not wanting that to be in the coastal hazard area for reasons that are obvious about, evacuation and putting people in harm's way and that sort of thing. But a green building, I guess you can put in harm's way and it doesn't mind. If it's resilient, it might not either, but especially. So it's a good question, but it's one we haven't wrestled to the ground yet.
Okay, and I had one more question for you, and this is just planner to planner kind of thing, just your own personal thoughts. It's interesting that we were kind of, pulling away from the bonuses in these other areas, and we're allowing them in the West Shore downtown CRAs that are in the coastal high hazard area. Is there a concern, and I guess I'm asking you broadly as a representative of your profession, Ms. Ornita can chime in also, is there a concern, because back in the day, because of planning directives like this, development started happening in certain areas, right? Certain people lost access to waterfronts, things like this happened. Is there a concern about these things? When I look at these areas, right, West Shore, downtown, these are areas that are directly close to water, and what we're saying by doing this, whether we mean it or not, is that only a certain strata of income will be able to have, right, development rights in those areas to do these sorts of things. So is there any concern about that as we go forward? Because we are limiting in many ways who can, and it is a limitation that's based on economics. So was there any thought about that or any concern, right? Was there any professional concern on your part as a planner about that?
I think with respect to downtown, the investments in the waterfront and public access to the waterfront is pretty much can be chalked up as a success story of one where we have access to the waterfront out there, and I see that when I go down there. West Shore's a different story, and that it has limited access already, and there are a couple of very nice parks over there and places that I'm assuming are not going to go away. But I don't know what new access to West Shore or existing access that we would be protecting that isn't already under the public ownership. I'd have to look a little more detailed It's not as if there's a lot of private land that's highly developable that's waterfront in West Shore. It's more the inland properties that I think of when I think of developability around there. So there are equity issues, though, all around downtown, and sort of neighborhood stabilization and some communities that are at risk because of their general, economic position of getting priced out of their neighborhood and stuff like that. So in both of those areas, we have been talking about that and how to try to mitigate that and make sure that we don't accelerate or unduly cause that sort of displacement through these policies.
All right, thank you. I saw Ms. Ornita moving as planner extraordinaire. I would like to hear her thoughts.
That, but I think it's a really interesting question and something that we certainly need to be mindful of. One thing that so the CRAs are typically areas that are in need of revitalization. So enhancing the incentives to improve those communities on its face seems like a positive, but certainly we would not want to have the unintended consequence of gentrification or pushing those people out. The incentives, including a component of affordable housing in them, I think helps with that, because right now what we're seeing, for example, in Channelside, which is a CRA, we're not seeing any affordable housing being developed there. But if we could build into the incentive that instead of coming and asking for a plan amendment here, they could just do a bonus, and if they included the affordable housing, that might start to provide some more mixed income in an area like that. Whether that equation works exactly the same in East Tampa or in another CRA is something we probably need to continue to study and look at.
All right, very good. That's all for me. I just had those couple questions. So if there are any more comments or questions from the commissioners at this point in time, not seeing any lights, we will thank you for the presentation, a great presentation, lots of good information, and look forward to seeing you back here again.
Thank you.
All right, on to our next agenda item. We have 4C, TACPA 23-18 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, northeast corner of East Fletcher Avenue and North 46th Street, and the presenter is Emily Phelan.
It's opening. All right, Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. This is TACPA 2318 at the northeast corner of East Fletcher Avenue and North 46th Street. This is privately initiated, regular scale. It is approximately 138.95 acres, and the request is to go from recreational open space and environmentally sensitive areas to public, semi-public, and environmentally sensitive areas. This is the general location map. You can see it in the northeast corner. It's in the University Planning District in the Terrace Park neighborhood. This is an aerial of the subject site. It's outlined in yellow. To the east are preservation areas. Directly to the south is the University of South Florida, and the site may look familiar as it is the Claw at USF, the golf course. To the west is unincorporated Hillsborough County, but it has multifamily and some commercial uses on the corner of Fowler and 46th. This is facing the subject site, a different view of the subject site. It is fairly large. And this is looking north on North 46th Street. The subject site is on the right. This is the adopted future land use map. The subject site is outlined in black. Directly to the west here, represented by the residential 20, is the unincorporated Hillsborough County jurisdictional boundary. This public, semi-public right here is the University of South Florida. You can see the environmentally sensitive areas. And further southeast right here is Temple Terrace. This is the subject site designated with the public, semi-public, and the environmentally sensitive areas. Under the existing recreational open space and environmentally sensitive areas, both dwelling units and non-residential uses are not permitted. Under the public, semi-public, well, let me start with the environmentally sensitive areas. Development would still not be permitted. No residential and no commercial non-residential uses would be permitted in that area. On the remaining part of the parcel, that would be public, semi-public. Both residential and non-residential uses are not defined. However, the intensity and indensity must be associated with a public institution and must be compatible with the surrounding development pattern. And this concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I have a question before everybody jumps in. Because I'm just, is this publicly initiated or is this privately initiated by the University of South Florida? I'm just curious. Where did this come from?
It's privately initiated.
Privately initiated? Okay.
Jennifer Lynn, Planning Commission staff. It's privately initiated, but there's definition in your procedures manual about what constitutes a publicly initiated request versus a privately initiated request. And Melissa Zornita, I hope you don't, you don't mind. That's why I think Emily's presentation said privately initiated is because a publicly initiated would come from this body or the city. Yeah, but they are the applicant.
Okay, and so no residential and no commercial, but technically you said there was no real definition on what those things are, so, I mean, this is just out in space. This seems like, I don't know, it seems like the football stadium is going to get extended across the street and just become a playground over there to me. It sounds really weird. And it's weird to me because this is one area that, like, as soon as somebody knows that, like, I'm on the planning commission, all my students ask me this all the time. What's going to happen to the claw? What's going to happen to the claw? So, I mean, this just seems really strange. And when this comes back, I know I'm going to have a lot more questions about it. So, you know, make sure that whoever the private applicant is, they have their people here and they're ready to answer some questions because, and I don't know if Commissioner Fernandez feels the same because he teaches down at the university also and does a lot of geospatial research and mapping, and I'm sure his students probably have the same questions for him too, like what are they doing with the claw, what's going on? So I think this is gonna be a pretty question-filled presentation when it comes back with more information, just to get you prepared for it. So let me calm down and see if, Commissioner Fernandez has more questions.
Yeah,
so.
This is just my opinion, but parking, lots and lots of parking. The football stadium's going right across the street. That's, you know, if you know the area, there's no parking there, single lane roads. I can't, yeah, maybe there's other things gonna happen there. I know even my colleagues have been interviewed on this, but that's what I see.
Ms. Zornita's moving again.
Well, so we have had a number of discussions with the university to make sure that the land use category is something that is appropriate for, and I don't want to speak for them with what they want to do. I understand they want to put out an RFP for development on the property, and they're not sure exactly which way that will go. But the PSP would allow for what they have all across the university, which is residential, office buildings, you know, educational facilities, medical facilities. So it could be any of those things, and we would look to the densities of the surrounding land use categories and the intensities of those to guide the compatibility as it comes in for development.
Thank you very much for that insight. That was very helpful. Are there any more questions or comments or statements from the commissioners on this when everybody's waiting for it to come back, I guess? We will thank you.
If there are any questions that you all want us to come back with the answers to, it's helpful if we hear the questions now so that we can make sure we have the answer, either from us or from the university.
Or don't be afraid to shoot emails if you don't want to get on TV like me and be a maniac. You can do it privately in email, so go ahead and get those emails sent to staff, and they will definitely get them answered or bring the information back when it comes before us again. All right, so with that, we'll thank you for the information and look forward to this coming back to us and move on to our next agenda item. 4D, TACPA 23-19, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment. 2 folios located on the eastern side of Morris Bridge Road, and the presenter is Jennifer Malone.
Jennifer Malone, Planning Commission staff. Okay, so this is 2319 Tufolio is located on the eastern side of Morris Bridge Road. This is a privately initiated small scale. It's about 28.36 acres. The request is from Rural Estate 10 and environmentally sensitive areas to suburban mixed use 6 and environmentally sensitive areas. So it's all the way up in the furthest northeastern corner of the city in the New Tampa Planning District and Flood Zone X. And it's located east of the Easton Park neighborhood because this is not in a neighborhood. And when you see the aerial, you'll see why. So this is the aerial of the subject site. The blue line is the jurisdictional boundary. This was annexed into the city in 2006, and it wasn't a contiguous it did create like a little donut hole essentially on the eastern side of Morris Bridge Road. So everything on the western side of Morris Bridge Road is in the city. The eastern side is a little bit less clear with what is in the city and what's in the county. So the parcels here on this other side of this blue line are in the county, but the two parcels for the request are in the city of Tampa, and this was annexed as a group of parcels in 2006 and then given the land use designation in the 2008 Tampa Comprehensive Plan. So this is the subject site to the right along Morris Bridge Road. It's a little challenging to getting pictures of this because it is a road where people drive very fast and there's not a lot of pull-offs. It's a very rural area, but this is what that looks like. And then to the south of the subject site, we're seeing some of that development that's coming in. I will also point out, I was remiss to mention this earlier, that the Pasco County line is about 10 minutes to the north of the subject site. That's just how far north it is. So this is the adopted future land use map. The adopted future land use is Rural Estate 10, and there's also some environmentally sensitive areas on the site. Across the street in that dark pink is suburban mixed use 6. That area of suburban mixed use 6 across the street is undeveloped, but there's a larger community. The entrance and the houses are just further south. And then there's agricultural in the county future land use, and then to the south in the land that's still in the county as well is natural preservation future land use. And the applicant is requesting SMU 6, and I apologize, this is SMU 3, the darker pink color. I might have stated SMU 6 incorrectly, but it's SMU 3. The applicant is requesting SMU 6 in the lighter pink. And there's nothing to this nearby in this future land use category. Right now, the applicant can have one dwelling unit on the subject site because there's only about 14 acres of the Rural Estate 10, and the density is one dwelling unit per 10 acres. I don't know what I did there. And about 40,000 square feet of non-residential uses. This is going to increase the potential to about 86 dwelling units and 321,000 square feet of residential or non-residential uses. So it's greatly increasing the residential density and allowing more types of uses allowed on the subject site, because suburban mixed use 6 can also consider commercial general uses, whereas a Rural Estate 10 would not allow those commercial general uses today. So that concludes the presentation. I'm available for questions.
I just had a quick question. Was it privately or publicly initiated?
This was privately initiated, yeah.
Are there any other questions on this one? Yes, Commissioner Fernandez.
I was just curious, were we going to get those flood maps ever with the presentations?
So we have started including in the packets for this evening's hearings, you will see a notation of what flood zone they're in. We did not add it to the maps, but we have the designation listed in the report.
Okay, I think it's beneficial for everybody to see the map. I know you have it up there as environmentally sensitive areas, but there's a regular floodway going right through the middle of the property. It's got the big red X lines going through it from FEMA, meaning it floods all the time, and I know it's probably not going to be built on, but just like the properties that I brought up in Valrico, introducing 86 units with impervious surface, that flood zone will increase. I mean, the portion they want to develop on is just surrounded by flood zones, so I just think it's a bad idea to be developing this property. But I really think we would all benefit by seeing those maps.
Okay, we'll work on getting the maps included.
Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. I actually did have a question about that floodway in the middle there, because I thought that's what that was. So, good questions, good questions. All right. Have we heard from the jurisdiction on any of this? The city of Tampa, did they have any early thoughts on any of it? I'm just wondering where they're angling.
We do have comments from the city of Tampa in the file and on the website, and I know Frank Hall is here with the city of Tampa if you have any specific questions, but they objected.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. Well, were there any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. Well, thank you for the information and look forward to this one coming back to us again also. All right. Yeah. Next up, we have item number 5, our executive director's report, and our presenter is Melissa Zornita.
Good afternoon, Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. At your seat, you should have a copy of my report. A couple of things that I wanted to highlight. Shortly after your meeting last month, the TPO did meet and selected their new Executive Director, Dr. Johnny Wong, who has been on staff. Was selected as the new TPO Executive Director. He will be starting next Monday with some overlap with Ms. Alden before she retires. And you guys are probably getting sick of the emails from me about Ms. Alden's retirement activities on November 3rd, but we hope you can join us. I've had a couple of meetings with both the University of South Florida and with the FSU Department of Urban and Regional Planning, talking about different ways that they can assist us with projects going forward. It's a great collaboration for us with the universities, but also a very cost-effective way to also enhance our capacity, particularly when we're so busy with so many projects. We've had a couple of meetings regarding the Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority's study of extending the Selman Expressway into South Hillsborough County along US 301, and some of the land use and community planning issues that will need to be worked through. We're looking at how we can work on those together. We had a success in the Fowler Avenue Vision Plan that, as you may recall, is working alongside DOT's study of some different alternatives for the utilization of the right-of-way along Fowler. Both us, the city, and Hart had expressed interest in having one of the two alternatives where there was a bus-only lane, and that either be on the outside or the inside, and they selected the alternative with a bus-only lane on the outside, which we think works well with the more urbanizing vision that is being developed for that area. We had another round of outreach on the Valrico Community Plan, and happy to answer any questions on any of the other items on the list. We are having a info barbecue next Wednesday. We're taking advantage of the fact that one of our judges for the awards program is from the Florida State Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Dennis Smith. He led a project where the students worked with the Gadsden County community to document their community heritage. And so he's going to be talking with us about that project on the morning of Wednesday. And then, of course, Wednesday evening, we have the Planning and Design Awards. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that he was coming down here for that event to get him to speak on that project. Next month, we just have a regular meeting and the public hearing on those two plan amendments. I'd be happy to, and on the back of the report is a list of the plan amendments that were heard. There were a number that were heard by the city of Tampa. A few of them, they did not agree with your recommendation. Some of them, they didn't agree with our recommendation also. That might be of interest to you all. And then we did have one Plant City plan amendment that you all had found consistent that was approved in September. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? I had a minor question. I see this Farm Bureau annual meeting down here at the bottom. I was just wondering how that was. We always get a lot of pressure on our agricultural community here in the county with so much development going on. It's one of those communities that hardly anybody talks about really until they're in trouble, but I'm always excited to hear what's going on with our agribusiness society here in the county. So
that was a really robust and fun event. I had not been invited before, so was thrilled to be included. They had Agricultural Commissioner Simpson speak, and he talked quite a bit about some incentives at the state level to continue agriculture in terms of almost like a not really a transfer of development rights, but almost a purchase of development rights. Sort of similar to the ELAP program, but where you keep farming. And that the state had put some money into that program, and he was hoping to put more into it. I thought that in particular was very interesting. Also, some discussion of some of the changes in immigration laws and how that's impacting the farm workers. So those were some of the issues, but they were a real friendly group of people, so it was a lot of fun.
yes, our agricultural community always has their arms open, and they are very friendly. So thank you for the information.
Absolutely.
Were there any other questions or comments on the commissioners? Ms. Zornita's report, not seeing any. Well, thank you for the information. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is business. Other business, chair's business, I have none. Old business, I don't believe there is any. Correct me if I'm wrong, nope. New business, does anyone have any? New business, not seeing anyone. Then we will move on to committee reports. Are there any committee reports for this meeting? Not, Commissioner Kress.
Of course, Lynn gave me a report to pass along from the Public Information Committee. So I think you all know, and Melissa just acknowledged that next week is the Planning and Design Awards. Raise your hand if you got your ticket. Okay, good. Good job, you guys. Tickets are still available until 10 o'clock, until 3 o'clock tomorrow, for those of you who weren't able to get one. And there's a rumor, yes, the rumor is that the jury selected an incredible crop of award winners this year. So that's my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Kress. Commissioner Bowden.
The Affordable Housing, Affordable Housing Advisory Board met on 9/18. Basically, the decision was made to write a letter in support of maintaining the $10 million in the Affordable Housing Fund, which got stripped. We had a chair report. Basically, the director report was talking about local housing incentive strategy plan that they're working on. So that was pretty much the gist of that meeting.
All right. Thank you very much. Really not seeing any questions or lights, so yeah, well, thank you for that. And we will move on. Are there any other committee reports? Let me check once, twice. Gone. All right. With that, we are done with our meeting, so we will retake this up at 5:30, right? 5:30 for our public hearings. And with that, the meeting's adjourned.